Hey everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm here with another project for Hit Kit Club, and today I'm using the March kit, and this is a bit of an off-the-page project. I decided to make some cards. I really wanted to use up a lot of the bits that I've kind of collected over the course of a few weeks working with the March kit, and so I have a bunch of things you can see here, some extra pattern paper, some scraps that I've cut already, some that are partially cut. I have like a die cut scallop strip that I've punched, some die cuts from the exclusive die cuts, just some random things that I had kind of collected. And when I work with a kit, I never throw anything away because there's always a use for something at some point. So I decided I would make kind of 3 cards for this and see where we go. So first thing I wanted to use a lot of was this different pattern paper from this pink paisley paper. I really like all the fun kind of rainbow of colors that are in different patterns and stuff, so I thought, oh, I'm going to use that. At first I thought I would just use the plain squares to make like a bit of a quilted kind of background card, but I quickly realized that they are almost too large, and you can see I literally have tiny little scraps of everything, so I'm just cutting them into 1 by 2 inch rectangles, and I'm going to kind of sort them here in the same kind of color family, so all the greens together, all the purple, the pink, etc., and kind of organize that. And then I decided I wanted to do something a little different, for at least for me, which is to use some paint. Really inspired from my friend Vicky Booten, her new collection. I saw her playing with it over the last few weeks, and so this isn't hers, but this is a mint paint that I had in my stash, and I love the color, so I thought, you know what, this will kind of go with everything. So I'm just going to kind of drag my old room key here from a hotel with some of the mint paint, and then I had some random scraps of white. This is just flat, plain, really cheap white cardstock, and I'm just kind of rubbing that mint paint just to the front of the card in a random pattern, and you can tell I'm not a messy scrapbooker. I have to clean up right away, and so I'm just really quickly going to set those aside to dry. They won't take really long because that paint I put on there is really, really thin. So you can see the largest card here is already done. So now I'm going to take those scraps of paper that I'd cut out, and I'm going to just kind of, no measuring required here. I'm just going to randomly stagger these across the front of the card and then trim off any of the excess. And then I'm going to add a little machine stitching, just really quickly, a couple rows across the top of the card, just add a little tiny bit of texture there, and lifting up the bottom so that the bottom parts of those rectangles aren't super flat on there. Now I have some die cuts that I've cut from the exclusive cut files. I have like some half finished packs of stickers. So I really want to try to use a good variety of things here. And so I'm going to use my scallop punch and layer this Pink Fresh Studio sticker on there. I'm just going to layer that on like a bit of a flower. And then I'm trying to really, almost the hardest thing is to decide which little bits that I want to use first and how they all kind of work together. And sometimes I kind of go on a bit of like a rampage and I think of one thing and then, oh, I'm off to think of another thing, a bit of one of those like squirrel moments. So at first that's kind of where I am with this. So I decided I wanted to use these stems, I'm going to call them. They're kind of like a leaf from the cut file. And I really love all these pretty flowers, and I really, really want to make that work, so I'm going to try to get that kind of all in there. And I'm not even really thinking, to be honest, of what sort of sentiment I want to put in there. It's kind of my afterthought almost. I know I want to make the pretty card, but I don't really know what I want it to be for. So now I'm trying to think, oh gosh, what do I have in the kit that I could use for that? I'm just going to staple these here to the backing. They seem to hold up a little better when I have the backing stapled to the transparency sheet. So I'm just going to not worry about my title too much. I'm just going to add some enamel dots, which I love, and then I decided I'm going to use this XO here from the Pink Fresh Mirror Shapes, and this is the one I had in a previous video talked about. I snapped it in half by accident. You got to be really careful when you take it off the page. And as you'll see, I added a black droplet down right on the bottom there, and then ended up smushing it just a tiny bit, and it looks really bad. So tried to correct it, and even, as you can see, stupidly tried to erase and cover up with more of the mint paint. But then, for some reason, the black stripe from the room key kind of smudged blackish gray kind of there on the bottom. So I ended up just sticking a couple random dots down there to kind of fill in the card, and that one's done. So pretty fast, you know, no messing around here. I find once you kind of limit what you have, and if you only use your scraps, you really can get things done quite quickly. So again, I have another painted piece of paper, and this is a piece of pattern paper I'd cut already. And so I'm just going to sew a couple things just to kind of get it stuck down versus using tape runner. And the stitching will also act as part of my design. So I'm kind of going to put that on there. And then I decide I really want to use this punch scallop strip. This is from the mint cardstock in the cardstock add-on. So I decided to add that. And then I decided I should maybe stitch that because I just covered up some of my stitching. And as you can see, I have to rethread my machine. Doesn't take too long, but just long enough to be a pain, you know what I mean? And that's because mostly I think the thread snaps because I'm using cheap thread. I'm not using a good thread because after all, this is paper, not a quilt. But you definitely could if you wanted to go all out and buy a whole bunch of expensive threads, which I have some in some fancy colors and metallics and stuff, but I truthfully almost always use the white thread. So now I'm going to grab my Dear Lizzie washi tape, and honestly, it's pretty amazing stuff. I love the fact that you can color it, although I don't color it. I haven't for any of parts of the kit here, but I love how it looks over top of that mint paint. You can kind of really see the transparency of it because it's not really dark. It looks like pattern paper, so I really, really love that. And now I'm just popping up one of those pretty flowers from the die cut ephemera pack. Add that to the top corner, and seriously, this card is like almost too quick to talk about because I'm going to add some enamel dots, and then I decide I'm going to use a stamp from my stash for the title for this. So I kind of knew I wanted to add a little one of the stickers, Chamel stickers, which are really, really fun. There's lots of great pennant shapes in there and strips and stuff, so I knew I was going to use one of those to put my sentiment on, and I needed something small enough that I could put it on quite easily. So I'm just going to staple that on. Had I known I was going to use that earlier, I probably would have just stitched it on, but staple works great. And then I'm just going to use these stamps from my stash. Really tiny little, this thank you. And that's pretty much the majority of this card. I kind of toy around with adding some flowers to that bottom corner, and then even adding more of a sentiment along the bottom, but I decided no, I'm just going to kind of leave it. Maybe add a gold mirrored heart, and that's it. I add it to my card base. So I always like to make a card front and then take the card front and add that to the card base. So I'm also adding some black droplets, to each of the cards. So I have kind of like a common theme. I have the mint paint as well as the black droplets that'll be on all the cards. Not that that's a huge focal point by any sort of means, but they will all kind of go together because of that. So now I'm just gonna, just like any scrapbook page, I'm gonna again go in with this washi tape because it's just so pretty, and I'm kind of addicted to it now that I've used it on the card. And I'm just gonna kind of, this time I'm gonna go long and kind of strip it off and make a couple different pieces, and then grab all my little tiny random bits here. And you can see I've made 2 cards already, and I've barely used any of the scraps in my stash. So I probably could have made, no word of a lie, 8 or 10 cards from the amount of scraps I have here. Forget the fact that I still have tons of pattern paper, as you can see on the left-hand side from the kit. And so I'm just gonna play around adding little tiny bits and just stitching everything down to the front of my card front. I guess we'll call this a card front. And I'm just changing the stitch on my machine. I'm adding a bit of a zigzag in there. And truthfully, you won't even see a lot of what I just did there with the layering of the paper and stuff because I kind of cover most of it up with die cuts and stuff. So I'm just going to layer more of these die cut stems because they're just kind of too pretty not to use. And then I'm going to trim off the leaves from this flower because it just doesn't kind of go. And it's hard to see, but that's one of those rose gold flowers. Unfortunately, because of the way it's hard to take a picture of that shiny foil. So between that and the video angle, honestly, the foil is tough, people. Super tough to photograph and super tough to video, but looks super pretty in real life. And really, that's all that matters, right? So now I'm going to add in more stems and just kind of play around with that. And I thought I might use that word live, but that just didn't seem to go. trying to use some of these stickers up because I really love them. I thought I might use some of this purple, but honestly there was just no room for it because this little piece that I'm playing with is pretty small. And I really wanted to use more of the stickers, but just didn't make it. But I went back to my Pink Fresh stickers here, the vinyl ones, and they're so fun. So I'm going to add that. I think it's a little crooked, so I'm just going to try and straighten it out. And then thought I might be able to add one of the rubber charms too, but it just wasn't working out. And then honestly, I needed to just finish off with another little swag from the cut file and some enamel dots. And truthfully, that is the majority of this card. Now it is pretty, this one's pretty, not plain, but it's pretty white. So I decided for this card that I was going to add some more color to the front of the card base. So I chose kind of this paper here from Dear Lizzie that has like the birds on one side and then the pink on the other. So I'm just going to add a bit of 1/4 of an inch around the outside of this, trim it down just to get kind of more of that teal minty color there. And then I thought I would just do some pink strips around it and just kind of leave it like that. But then decided I liked the pink floral behind that bird pattern and decided to use that as the bottom. And it all kind of matches, so works even better. And then I decided that bottom kind of gap there, you can see there's about 3/4 of an inch or so where there's nothing. So I added another mint scallop strip of paper and then another tiny, like 1/4 inch probably, piece of that paper from the number 24 pink paisley paper. And then as you can see here, I stitched my whole card together like closed, like it's closed. So I ended up having to cut it open, as you can see here, peel off the stitching and stitch it again. So that's my public service announcement for today, is be careful if you're sewing a card that you kind of do it all before you put it on the card base, because otherwise you'll probably do what I just did, which kind of stinks, but oh well, what can you do? So here's a couple close-ups. Here's that last card that I made here. Again, that rose gold flower is really pretty, but it looks black on the photograph. But I really love that mint swash of paper. I'm going to do that again. And there's the second card that I made, which is the thank you card. Turned out really, really pretty. Love that washi tape there, like the pattern paper. And then here's that first card with all the little different strips and the pink paisley die cuts and the Pink Fresh Studio stickers. And yeah, a really, really easy set of cards and a great way to kind of kill your kit, so to speak. And I still have a ton left, so I better get working on some more. Have a great day.